On this episode of ITG, the decision from the House looms, cuts loom and ongoing for the WVU football program, and we recap what we saw at the spring showcase. All of that and more on this edition of In the Gun.
You are now watching Believe.
ITG.
With Wes, Owen, and Jed.
I've got the best teammates in the business.
No way!
They both played the game. They both know the game. Owen is the runaway beer truck known for having some fun.
Owen Schmidt, you have a podcast In the Gun.
Owen Schmidt, like a runaway beer truck down the sidelines.
Jed is the signal caller who is the X's and O's and the brainiac.
Statistically, always punting on fourth down makes no sense.
So we've combined those two skill sets.
Skills I've acquired over a very long career.
You are In the Gun.
Once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 238 of your new favorite WVU football podcast. I am Wes Schuler with the best teammates in the business. We've got the signal caller, Jed Drenning, who will be joined in a few minutes by the beer truck, Big O. And as always, we are brought to you in part by our friends at Bet Online. The game starts here. And before we start, a quick apology to all of our dear listeners, but especially to Ross Hodge.
I know where this is going.
I realize I butchered it on the last episode. It was before the official announcement and press conference and everything, all right? I was not the only one that got it wrong, but I was the only one who got it wrong after the press conference because we recorded that a day ahead of time. No excuses, perform like a champion, and I did not. My apologies to Ross Hodge, not Hoge, all right? Don't doge my Hoge. His name is Ross Hodge. I will never forget it for the rest of my life. I apologize to him. And my goodness, Jed, I got more tweets and more comments about this thing than I did when my daughters were born. I apologize.
Well, let me say this, Wes. You were not alone because, as I like to point out as often at every chance I get on this show, if you're coming here for Jed's basketball analysis, you are sorely and gravely mistaken. Please don't do that. All right. That's just something at best that I'm not even a glorified fan. I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to basketball. I'm just a fan. All right. So when it came to that, through the whole process, I don't know that I had heard his name spoken, but I assumed it was Hodge. So then the show starts. You were calling him Hodge. And I'll be honest, I defer to you when it comes to basketball.
Yeah, that was your first mistake.
Well, so I started saying it. I don't know how many times I did say it, but probably not as many because people weren't attacking me as viciously as they were attacking you. But I thought, well, you know what? Maybe it's not Hodge.
I got it wrong. I got it wrong. I messed it up.
Okay. But hey, I got it wrong with you then, right? I got it wrong with you. So we both own it. Yeah.
I led you into the fire, Jed, and for that I apologize. I owe you one. Yes, I messed it up. Listen. I've said this before, I think, on this podcast. I also host a radio show every day, so sometimes my signals get crossed there. But if you do this long enough, and whatever this is, if you're talking on a podcast, on a radio show, on a TV show, if you write articles, whatever, eventually you're going to do something dumb and step in it. It's just part of the nature of the business, all right? And so I'll take it relative my mistake in stepping in it was messing up our new head coach's last name. Not good, not right. No excuses, play like a champion. But hey, you're going to step in it every once in a while. And I did on the last episode. My deepest and sincerest apologies. All right. Another thank you to our friends at Toothman Ford.
For the sake of transparency, I'm going to be honest with you. Once those things started coming in, and I did hear sound bites then after the fact, and I was like, his name is Hodge. I was like relieved because I kept thinking during the show, that name's hard to say. That's not what it looks like. It's like, do we have to get used to saying Hodge?
Well, we just did it. We just did it with Darren DeVries, whose name was actually spelled Darian, but it was pronounced Darren.
Yes.
And Jed, I was confused, pardon me, because my example in my mind was Merrill Hodge, who of course was the Steelers and the Chicago Bears running back who I work, and his last name is spelled Hoge. There's no D in there.
Yes, that's right.
And so again, I can laugh at it. It's not the first time I've made a mistake in my decade of doing these type of things. Plus, it won't be the last time. Like I said, we all step in it from time to time. But my goodness, I got more texts and comments and messages than I did when my daughters were born. I don't apologize to you people. All right, you're just fine. But I do apologize to our new fearless leader, Ross Hodge. Won't happen again.
The strangest thing about everything you just said there, Wes, was you including Chicago Bears when you gave the career profile of Merrill Hodge. As if people remember, he spent the last few years of his career with the Bears.
Well, listen, Jed, if I would have said the Pittsburgh Steelers, someone would have been in the comments, hey, he
That's
played
right.
for the
That's
Chicago
right.
Bears
Yeah,
as
that's
well,
right.
too.
It's like saying Franco Harris of the Steelers and the Seahawks. Okay, anyway, I get it. I get it. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
Joe Montana, famously of the Niners and the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, of course, as everybody
Yeah.
knows. Another thank you to our friends at Toothman Ford. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. Big shout out to JR, our friends there, everybody at Team Toothman for being part of this podcast since about day one. Jed, let's get into some of this stuff here as kind of our headlines, our intro segment, if you will. And I want to defer to you a little bit on this one because I think you've got the details of this a little bit better. You've been following this a little bit closer than I have, but we have obviously kept our audience updated, abreast, if you will, of this House decision that is looming across collegiate sports that will have a massive impact on the future of collegiate sports. Obviously football, but every college sport. Obviously WVU, but every collegiate program. We've gotten some news already. We're still awaiting maybe some final T's to be crossed and I's to be dotted. So where are we at with this whole, like I said, looming big kind of moment here for the future of collegiate athletics?
Yeah, we've been treating this as a foregone conclusion for several months now. But the truth is, Judge Claudia Wilkin, who's about to retire, still hasn't ruled on or approved this in California. I think she's poised to do so. She certainly seems to be heavily leaning that way. But what she did, she came out within the last couple of days and said, I'm ready to do this so long as two considerations take place here. I'll hit the second one first because we'll focus more on the first one. The second one, she said, look, I'd like to see some adjusted language relating to the binding of future athletes to the 10-year settlement because that's a long time. So I understand that. This is a 10-year proposition. So she probably wants to loosen some of that up and maybe provide a little more leeway on the side of the athletes. That's what it sounds like she's steering towards there. But the first point she made, and the other thing she asked for, is something we've heard not just Coach Rod, but just about every coach that had a microphone in front of them during the spring. As we talked about this roster adjustment, working toward that roster limit of 105 that looms. Look, can't you grandfather these kids and phase them in so you don't have to cut all the way down to 105 right away? Well, she said in point number one of the other things she'd like to see is I'd like to provide or see some a phase-in period provided for implementing new roster limits or grandfather in current athletes on those rosters. Now, that's kind of broad language. It can mean a host of things, but it sounds like she's thinking like a lot of the coaches are thinking. So I think if it comes back that those considerations are met, she's ready to approve this thing and get it rolling. And both of them sound like probably good news. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to stick with the 125, 130 man roster that we've had all along. But it does mean that something a little more sensible than a hard and rigid 105 right at the cutoff is going to take place. And one of the things we discussed, Wes, because we'll get into in the body of the show about the cuts that took place with some of the Mountaineers this week. That's a harsh term to use, but that's how it is. That's the reality of the situation. The truth is, it's better to happen now than happen game week because you don't have to get down to your 105 until classes start or you play a game, whichever comes first. So the more time that a kid who's not going to be part of that 105 has to land somewhere else, the better off they are. So wouldn't you much rather be doing that in April?
Totally.
So when the semester winds down, you can get your head on a swivel and start looking at what else is out there as opposed to in August. Because I don't know, in a perfect world, Rich would like to get close to that 105 around July-ish, but we're probably going to need a little more than that going into camp. Not a whole lot more. We'll see how this shakes out, but I don't want to spend too much time talking about that side of it because we will hit that part of it in the body of the show. But that's that's where this ruling comes down. It was nice to see Judge Wilkins say, "Look, I'm ready to approve this, but how about some considerations made for this rigid 105? We have a little wiggle room there, so it's not maybe as strict as take Nebraska from 150 to 105 like that. Because what's going to happen? You're going to hear tearful stories, emotional stories across the fruited plain from every program that every kid that gets cut. Oh, it's terrible because of this. It's terrible because of that. It's sad, and every school is going to have these. And I really don't know if you're upset about one or two kids that get cut, who would you replace them with? Because I'm going to be just as upset with the one or two you'd pick to replace them.
Sure.
There are no good decisions here. So anyway, thoughts.
Yeah, it's complicated. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, Jed. A lot of this stuff makes a lot of sense to me. A lot of it's like almost like a foreign language, you know? And I think part of that is ever since in this like it seems like every year of post-COVID in college football. And again, we hyper focus on college football because that's what the show is, but college athletics in general as well, too, not to shortchange
Sure.
it. Massive landscape change every year since COVID, whether it's been NIL, whether it's been the portal, whether it's been more conference realignment. I mean, it just feels like every year there's something brand new, and you feel like, okay, we got our baseline and this is what we are again. And then here comes someone to level the foundation and start building a brand new house. Like it's hard to just find your footing in all of this sometimes. But I do think a lot of the and obviously this goes without saying. I couldn't even pronounce our new basketball head coach's last name correctly, okay? I'm not a genius, and particularly when it comes to the law and the legal world, right? And a lot of that legalese jargon that gets used in these type of court cases and these type of announcements and decisions, if you will. But I think a lot of it makes sense in the way that the judge lays it out. I do think it's smart, like you said, to not have this immediate, this rash need to have hundreds of kids cut across college football programs to get down to that exact 105 number. But again, like this just all seems very rapid, and it's like I try and read people like Ross Dellinger and their article, the people that are very tapped into this type of
Yeah.
thing. And it even seems like as you read their articles and what they know, we still don't have maybe the firmest grasp on this like we would like to. So it's all very rapid. It's all very fluid. But like I said, I do know we are going to have some type. We are closer to finality in all of this, I think, than we've been in a while. And this is, again, obviously going to be kind of one of those massive landmark moments that we will continue to reference for the next couple years and decades going forward.
There's no easy way to approach it. There's no easy way to handle it. There's no easy way for fans to digest it. Um, it's tough to say it's the new normal because it does. There's no adjustment period. This is all happening by the seat of our pants at 1,000 miles an hour. It's very quickly happening, and to go from what we've been used to forever down to this hard and rigid number, and the stories behind. Look, what's going to lay in the wake here are these awesome stories of walk-ons as we know them will to some extent go the way of the dinosaur because they'll transfer down, they'll play elsewhere, wherever the case might be. So that's the Owen Schmitz and the Rich Rods of the world. I mean, those stories are, it's tough to digest and get used to and accept. But the reality is, what every team in America is going to try and do is cut their way down to the 105 that they think puts them in the best position to win as many games as possible this year. That's what they're going to try and do. And that's going to lead to a lot of heart wrenching stories that we don't like to hear about kids that came here for all the right reasons and went elsewhere for all the right reasons. And ties are going to be cut. And there's just no way to, put lipstick on it. There's no way to position it to where it's a positive thing. It's a harsh reality of the world that we find ourselves living in now. And we're going to have to, until maybe there's other redress. I don't know what this is going to look like next year, in 2 years, in 5 years, or 10, certainly. But right now, this is tough. And we're, for the first time, having these training camp kind of conversations. I mean, we've always heard that the pink slip conversation at NFL training camps, the hardest conversation coaches have.
Yeah.
Well, now reduce that down to having it with a 17 or 18-year-old kid. It's that much more difficult when they gave up so much to pick you over all other comers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's happening at every school in America. And it's difficult. It's very difficult. But best you can do is if they're not part of your plans, you could be selfish and
Sure.
let it linger and try and use them as a body in camp or as a body through OTAs, or it might be, or you can kind of lean in towards doing what's something of the right thing, saying, look, irrespective of what's going to play out, we probably don't see you being part of this. Why don't you, get on with your journey elsewhere and start it now so you have a puncher's chance to land in a favorable spot. And that's a lot of schools are doing that.
Yeah.
So let's
That's
see
the right
what
way
this
to do it.
language of the 105 means. What's that?
I just said that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, and we'll see what this language of the 105 means, what kind of exceptions or transitions they're going to allow for being grandfathered in. Again, I don't expect drastic changes, but hopefully this will lead to some change with that. We'll see.
I think so. And last thing I'll say that as you kind of touched on that end there, that last part. Look, we, as much as I think the purists like you and I kind of dragged our feet for a long time, it's hard to deny that the collegiate model, and again, particularly in football, is starting to look more and more like the pro model, right? I mean, it's been inching closer and closer, and there's some things that are good with that. Certainly, I think we all agree these kids deserve to get compensated for all the money that they make and all the revenue that they generate. But with that, when you get closer and closer to the pro model, there's also some of the underbelly stuff of that. And as you just kind of mentioned, like this is reality in professional sports where there's a lot of money involved for the players and only so many spots, is that some guys are going to get cut. And unfortunately, that has trickled down as well, too, as a lot of these things start to blend together. And you're right. It's one thing when you're somebody in the NFL and you were one of the 1% who got to go to college football, and now you're one of the 1% trying to get to the NFL, as opposed to being 18, 19, 20 years old and really just chasing a dream and maybe trying to make a little bit of money while you get your education and all those different things, provide a little bit for your family, and maybe have a shot to do this, into your 20s and 30s. But if not, you're going to be in a good spot to go get nice employment and set up a nice career for yourself. It's more difficult when you're 18, 19, 20 than when you're 22, 23, 24, certainly. But again, unfortunately, Jed, as all these things start to blend together, I think this is part of it looking a little bit more like the pro model as well, too.
And this is the truth of the matter. And this is what I remind myself of. It's not as though the money wouldn't be there if the kids weren't now getting a cut of it. The money's still the money. It's just now it's how it's being divided up. Correct. So I try to remind myself, if that TV executive at ESPN or Fox, or it might be one of the media partners of college sports, the power brokers, or the commissioner of the SEC, Greg Sankey, whoever it might be, look, it's not as though they're wanting and short of things that they're after. Their pockets are lined more than they've ever been. But if dividing the money up slightly differently means that maybe one less yacht for a TV executive, or one less muscle car in the garage in the mansion of a TV executive or conference commissioner, if that means that a Wyatt Milam who grew up in Spring Valley was about all the right things and came to West Virginia and lived his dream and didn't ask for the life-changing money but got it anyway, Zach Frazier didn't ask for the money, got it anyway, if that means that same money that's there anyway, it's not like we're getting it back. It's right. Still there. It's part of that market. It's part of that apparatus that's already there. They're just carving it up differently. If that means a little bit of that money's now in the pocket of the Zach Fraziers and the Wyatt Milams and the Garrett Greens, whoever it might be, the Nikos, whoever it might be, okay, that makes me slightly happier than that TV executive getting the extra several $100,000.
Totally.
Again, just remind yourself, it's not like if the kids weren't getting it, it will go back into the pockets of fans. No, this is already in the machine. That money is in the machine. It's just a question of how's the money going to be divided up. And so that's how I keep my sanity, is reminding myself of that. Okay. Yes. Instead of some high rolling executive getting one more thing across the top that they don't need. Yeah. Another silver spoon. Some hardworking, grinding kid who's about all the right stuff, and we can come up with several examples. Now they're getting the life-changing money that 15 years ago, because they were an Owen Schmidt, they wouldn't even ask for, right? They would have done it anyway.
And
But
Jed,
now they're getting it instead of the high rollers.
and even if it's not life-changing money, right? Because not all these guys are making six figures and
That's right.
$1,000,000. But even if you're someone who makes 40, 50, 60, 80 grand, like coming out of college with that base to get yourself a house or a place to live or a vehicle that you're going to need for your job or whatever is still great. And like I was just out at the combine a couple weeks ago for my job, and one of the cool things that we get to do at the combine every year is the Steelers general manager sits down with us for a segment. So it was Kevin Colbert for my first few years. Now it's been Omar Khan for these last couple years. And I asked him something along the lines of, a lot. It's the quarterback evaluations are crazy now for these guys coming out, right? Because you'll have one quarterback who maybe like a Trevor Lawrence type was like this, right? A Kenny Pickett was like this, who was at one school for 3, 4, 5 years, and now they're in the draft process. But then you have these guys like Jaden Daniels who played for multiple programs. Yes. You've got guys like Caleb Williams who played for multiple programs. You've got Tyler Shuck this year. Joe Burrow. Tyler Shuck this year played for 3 different teams. Joe Burrow. And so is my question for Omar was, we kind of focus a lot on the negative of the transfer portal a lot, but does this make your evaluations easier? Because now you can talk to 2 or 3 head coaches. Now you can talk to multiple offensive coordinators, multiple quarterback coaches, multiple people in the cafeteria to see what the kids' characters like and all that stuff, right? And he gave us a nice answer about how there's good and there's bad. They always want as many data points. But he said one of the things that we've really found, too, that's been of benefit is, he didn't say waste time, because he as an NFL general manager, he put it more eloquently than that. But he basically said, we don't have to waste as much time with these guys now, sitting them down and talking about finances when they get to our organization. Because they've already got more money than they know what to do with. Some of them,
and they have a team.
And they have a team, and they've had to balance this in the construct of their teammates and what their program has to pay the roster, and they have some semblance of money management at least. And even if it went badly for them, even if they got some money in college and they blew through all of it, they've at least got some background in that regard. They're not starting fresh there. So
great point. It's one thing to be the most popular.
There's a lot of positives to focus on too.
Yeah, it's one thing to be the most popular kid in the room, which most of them are through their college experience. But it's a whole different thing to get accustomed to being the richest kid in the room, And this is teaching them that before they get to the NFL, because that kind of shell shock and culture shock is something that those who have never had anything get to the NFL and they can't handle it. So this is a warming up period for that. That's a great point. But we'll kind of jam this other story into the same topic and conversation, Wes, because it really does weigh in on what we're talking about. The other thing we were going to talk about, there's a Division II kid. And we said this as soon as the quarterback from Vandy said JUCO shouldn't count toward my NIL. Look at all the squandered money opportunities I had, because I'm not going to make any name, image, likeness, money at JUCO level. So how can you count that against me? So he gets extra eligibility at Vandy, as he should. Nobody's going to argue that. How many times on this show, including even last week with Owen, did we say, look, the Division II, Division III argument's coming? Obviously. We know it's coming. You can't really have D2, D3 opportunities in NIL there either. So somebody's going to make the same argument. Guess what has happened this week?
Somebody made the same argument.
A hoops player from the College of Charleston, I think he started somewhere else at Southeastern Oklahoma or somewhere, transferred to the College of Charleston. As I understand this, he was out of eligibility. Well, he entered himself in the portal. I'm not sure of all the details, but he had a chance to make $1 million if he played another year. So now he's petitioning the court saying, look, you can't count this against me. I never had these $1 million opportunities playing D2. The kid's name is, again, from the College of Charleston, Ante. I told you before we came on the air, he sounds like one of the guys. Detective Brian Mills.
I think it's Hoge is how he pronounces it.
I think it's Hoge. It's Brzovic. It sounds like one of the guys that kidnapped Liam Neeson's daughter. It's like Ante Brzovic. Well, anyway, the kid is petitioning the court for this $1 million opportunity, and I hope he wins. Why? Are you kidding me? I mean, what this is all heading towards, correct me if I'm wrong, there is so little resistance to stopping the free movement and the free market and the free enterprise of kids. It started with the 9-0 ruling from Supreme Court, slapping the NCAA around, saying, "Who do you think you are? This is the United States of America." Of course, they can make name, image, and likeness money on their opportunities, on their name, their image, and their likeness. This is heading towards, it's almost going to be unlimited eligibility, because somebody's going to push the envelope and say, "Look, I don't have a pro career beyond this, but are you telling me that during my optimal earning years, you're going to cut short my college career because of some NCAA silly eligibility rule, and I can't make this additional $500,000 a year?" That's coming. That's coming.
But that's a heck of a Pandora's box to open, because then what stops someone from Pat White then saying, "Where's the money that I should have earned? Where Reggie Bush? Where's the money that Reggie Bush should have earned?"
Stop right there. Remember, part of the initial settlement, it went several years back and paid the players who haven't paid in several years.
Right.
And I'll tell you what,
how much does Major Harris deserve some money here?
Hey, I know a kicker that made over $100,000 that hadn't played in several years as part of that settlement. He's just like, "I'm making how much?" And this kid was a kicker during that era that he qualified. Yes. So, I mean, they have a formula they worked out. Like Joe Burrow was the maximum high-profile position, high-profile school.
Sure.
He couldn't earn. And I think they said he was like several $1 million that he was going to be owed. But, yeah, a kicker over $100,000 just because he wasn't able to make the money. But, I'm not going to forecast many limitations to this at all, because all I can see is somebody standing before court, and these people are so terrified of these antitrust sanctions and these antitrust penalties. They're going to say, "I don't have a pro career in front of me, and this college is telling me that they're willing to pay me another $500,000 to come back and play another year, and the only reason I have to turn that $500,000 down is because of some arbitrary, made-up NCAA eligibility rule? That's why I can't make $500,000 and change the rest of my life? Come on." And there has
to be some, right? Till there's some 35, 36-year-old quarterback that's on his 17th year of eligibility. Oh, good
I joked
Lord.
with somebody else. I said 34. I said, "You're gonna have 34-year-olds retiring." Yeah.
We'll have the next Van Wilder movie is going to be about a college football quarterback.
I promised myself at the height of COVID. Ask my wife. She gets tired of hearing me say this. About 6 months into COVID, I said, "I'm taking a vow. You will never again hear me say, 'Never thought I'd see that happen.' I'm done saying it."
Done saying it.
And I've stopped since June or the summer of 2020. I stopped saying it, and I'm done. I took a vow. So
fantastic. Well, we do need to get to a break here, but more on the other side about some of these cuts that we've been discussing. We'll give some of our spring showcase observations as well, too, as that was just a few days ago, this past Saturday in Morgantown. We'll do all of that on the other side. You are in the gun. For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
There are better-known tractors in the world than Coyote. Ones with bigger names, longer histories, more popular hats, cute toy lines. But there's not a single tractor ever been built that's better equipped to do the dirty work. So we'll just focus on what really matters. Coyote, we dig dirt.
Now at Johnston Equipment, get 0% financing or a free loader with low-rate financing on select Coyote models in stock. Visit us on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan.
Back in the gun here as we roll along on this episode 238. As we enter April, the spring showcase is now behind us. By the next time we record, the portal will be open once again. So, again, I mean, everything happening very quickly now. Hey, and again, as college starts to mirror and look more like the pros, that's one thing that the pros do so well, too. They never go away. There's always something going on, always some type of news or movement or something happening. And that is, of course, continuing. And Jed, a big part of that now, a newer part of that now is, like we kind of alluded to, with these teams needing to get down to 105 or anticipation of at least being pretty stinking close to that number. We've seen some sizable cuts from some of these programs over the last 48 hours, three days or so.
We have, again, let's put the numbers in context. West Virginia has hovered in the 125 plus range with their roster, right? So you're saying, okay, well, you got to get down to 105. No, not necessarily. That doesn't mean just cutting 20 kids. There's some kids that aren't on campus yet. There's some acquisitions you're going to have to make to solidify certain positions in the portal and foster better competition in certain rooms. That has to happen through the portal. So you might think it's counterintuitive to have a bunch of cuts, and then a few weeks later, you're going to see all this news that we're having all these additions through the portal. Right. That's going to happen. Okay. Adjust your mindset. It's going to happen. There's some kids who aren't on campus yet who are signed. A lot of change has to take place between now and the summer, or certainly now in August. It started with this first round of cuts. Some of the names might have surprised some people. Some of the names, we're doing all the right things, came here for the right reasons. This is all about, at the end of the day, trying to massage your roster to get to the point, just like every other team in America. If it's going to be 105 by your first game, it has to be the best 105 to win as many games as you can win. Mm-hmm. With some combination of angling toward the future with some developmental kids that you have faith in will be here. Because that's the other thing. Every kid you're looking to develop is high risk now, because every one of these kids is in a contract year. I mean, it used to be, put him on the shelf, put him in the weight room. In 3 years, we'll come back and revisit. Right. He'll be big enough and strong enough. And, you do that now, those kids are going to jump in the portal after 2 years. Hey, thanks for developing me. I'm off to this other school because they're going to offer me more money. So you got to do what's right for your unit, what's right for your program right now for the 105. So the cuts are a tough and emotional part of this. You hate to see it happen, but it's not over. Some of the names are surprising. Some of the names were somewhat coveted recruits that we signed from the outside looking in. Some of the names were kids that we just recently, since Rich was hired, acquired via the portal in December. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, they've all had an equal opportunity to make an impact through off-season conditionings, through spring ball, and it didn't look like those kids were going to be part of the plan, because we're going to try and improve ourselves in various spots through acquisition and otherwise. And that's kind of where it's going to be. I hate to see every one of the names on here to see that it didn't work out. I don't want to get into individual names, but the names are out there for public consumption. I'm sure you've seen them listed somewhere, but it's in the ballpark of 20. It's not over. I mean, some of these kids may have retired anyway for other reasons, health, who knows? There's different things kids got going on that, under the current circumstances, maybe it's not for them. And instead of moving on to somewhere else, maybe they'll just hang it up altogether. Some of the kids will transfer laterally. Some of the kids will transfer down. But the upside to it is, at least these kids at this juncture have a pretty good opportunity to survey the landscape, see what's out there, see what other offers are out there. And I've said all along, look, these D2 kids are going to be lining up at these FBS programs with a fishing net. From now until August, trying to catch everything that's out there. So worst case scenario, and I don't even think it's that worse, you transfer down. That's what me and Chris George did. And I don't have one single regret that we did so. Nothing about all three stops I had for my career, it's just like I told Coach Bowden, I was in the portal before it was cool, right? I played at three schools, right? And I don't have a single regret about anything or any stop that I made, including my final destination at what was an NAIA school, transferring from West Virginia to Glenville. I'm very glad that I did it. It was a perfect fit for me, what I was looking for in life. It was the experience that I wanted. It wasn't in front of 60K a week, but it was a great experience, relationships that I'll have forever. And that's what's in the future, hopefully, for a lot of these kids. Either they transfer somewhere else, maybe it's another, power conference school. If it's a good fit, maybe it's a G5 school, or maybe they transfer down. Maybe they go FCS, maybe they go Division two, whatever the case might be. But the fact that it's happening now, they can start lining things up and see what's out there from an offer standpoint.
Yeah.
Enter the portal, see what's out there, because the portal is already a flooded market. So it's not like you can just jump in within a couple days. Well, there you go, problem solved. No, these kids are learning more and more. And when you hear them talk, when you talk to them, it's interesting to get their take on it. Like, I was already in the portal once. If I could avoid it a second time, I'd really like to. You hear more and more of those types of accounts, and there's truth to that. There's merit to that. But again, sad. This is nothing to be happy about. It's difficult on the staff. They've said so since the beginning. But once again, I come back with, you're going to be upset about some of these names and some of these kids, but I defy you to tell me, who would you replace them with? It's not going to be that makes everybody smile. Oh, well, that's the kid that the entire world is satisfied with cutting. There's no such thing. There's no such thing.
No.
You're going to potentially be making enemies because it didn't work out. And that's just the nature of what's going to happen at every school in America. Every school in America is going to have kids cut. Every school in America is going to have kids that dreamed of playing for the team that's cutting them. They might have had family members tied to the school that's cutting them. That's going to happen at every school in America. It's unfortunate, it's sad, but it's the new reality of how this works. You can't afford to take as many chances from a developmental standpoint as you once did, because you're quite literally risking your job. If you're not taking somebody that can help you right now, you might just be developing somebody else's kid for next year that helps them save their job. Well, you don't save your own.
Jed, potential is like a dirty word in college athletics now. Potential will get you fired. Because like you said, in the past, it was great. I can take this kid, I can stash him for 1, 2, 3 years in the weight room, in the film room, whatever we need to do. He's got the potential. Now potential will get you fired. That's another way where it very much mirrors the NFL now. Like, if this ain't working in a year or so, we're all going to be looking for new jobs. So we don't have 2, 3 years for you to figure it out. We have got to put the best product on the field right now. Potential is suddenly a dirty word. It's not. I need production, not potential. And that is that is another one of those things that has changed very quickly and is different from the fabric of what we all grew up with. And it's tough to digest. I totally get it. I do. Yeah. And I'm with you too. I understand some people have kind of gotten a little hardened, like a little callous over this stuff now because, hey, these kids are making money. These kids can hop in the portal and leave. It's a two-way street. It is what it is. And I'm not saying those people are wrong. Like I do think there's a lot of merit to that. But I always come back to, for the most part, some of these kids do, and they move in prep schools and things. But for the most part, they don't choose where they go to high school or where they grow up, right? It's wherever their parents lived. It's wherever their family was, wherever they were born.
That's right.
If they're fortunate enough to go to the National Football League, maybe if you're really good and you make it to a second and third contract in free agency, you can pick where you want to go. But that's very rare as well, too. Usually you're drafted. Most of the guys have one contract, and that's their NFL career. This is truly, for the majority of, for 99.9% of these guys, this is the one time they get to pick the football team they are going to play on and not have that decision made by the region that they grow up in or wherever they're selected in the NFL draft. Again, I know it's different, and I know the emotional side for a lot of fans is gone because college athletics have become so transactional. But these kids still chose to come here. And like you mentioned, for a lot of them, it was a family thing. It was a lifelong dream. And now that's being taken away. And obviously not just at WVU, it's schools across the country. I will always root for, and I will always feel for, I know I've said this before, people who throw on that flying WV. I don't care what sport it is. I don't care if you're someone who comes to school here and you're someone who's on the academic side or the arts and performance side of life, whatever it may be. I got your back. Like, I'm in your corner because you chose to be a Mountaineer. You wanted to go to WVU. And I think it takes a special type of person, and I mean that in the best way possible, to
Yes.
choose to attend this university with the magnifying glass that is on you, with the attention that is on you, and just with the culture that in West Virginia that is different than a lot of the areas where these guys grow up in all across the country. I always got a place for those guys in my heart, and it's tough to see that decision not made by them when they chose to come here.
And in some respects, Wes, this is simply a much more hardcore, certainly much more amplified version of kind of what we've always had to an extent. It's just this gets lost on most people. Take Charles Wesley Godwin. He told us his story on here.
Yeah.
Just because you want to be a walk-on at West Virginia doesn't mean you can. Not every kid that tries to do it succeeds. So there were always those kids who even fell short at the opportunity that we're talking about. Those who are cut right now earned.
Mm-hmm.
So those who are cut already persevered and overcame some of those hurdles and some of those challenges that not everybody can. So they were already winners in some respects that a lot of kids weren't able to pull off. So hats off to them. But what's disheartening about it? I can't imagine what this was for the staff. It's been terribly difficult for them because I'm looking at the list myself, and as I go through the names, Wes, a couple different things come to mind. Some of the kids I'm remembering during the initial eval when I was breaking down their high school tape and what I was seeing. A lot of them I talked to their high school coaches, okay, for preparation for our recruiting shows and our recruiting content that me and Tony do for Learfield. So I remember back to that, and I'm like, man, what a shame that didn't work out because that kid just really had such high potential. And we thought this, and that coming out, and we thought he'd be a fit for this reason, that reason. And then there's a bunch of the other kids. I'm thinking beyond that on a much more personal level. I'm thinking of something they did that made me laugh, like a little personal anecdote that I might have in the elevator at Texas Tech, right? Or at a practice 2 years ago during August camp, or just something that I'm looking at these names and I'm thinking, oh, that's right. I remember when he did this or that, and it kind of I'm chuckling as I'm thinking. I'm like, see, that's just the glimpse that I have into the everyday reality that all their teammates were experiencing with them, and they're losing a brother. I mean, those that remain are losing a brother.
Yeah,
because I'm trying to think back to when I was playing, and if this had been going on, this would have been so terribly difficult to rally around the notion of losing teammates like this, but they're forcing it upon us, and we got to do it. So it's sad, but here we are. Best wishes to every single one of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as long as they don't end up at Pitt, we'll be rooting for their success wherever they land next. A big thanks to our friends at Fortis, our guy Rick Lewis, for being a presenting sponsor of this program as well, too, for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. You got to visit fortis.us.com. All right, Jed, final thing on the agenda here for this episode 238 of In the Gun, and that is, of course, the Spring Showcase. Our thoughts from the new iteration of the spring game, if you will, this past Saturday at Mountaineer Field at Milan Puskar Stadium. First time in the second Rich Rodriguez era for WVU. And this one was certainly different. We talked about this on the preview last week. If you're anybody who, keeps your finger on the pulse of these things, these games are now different all across college football because of the transfer portal. So I don't think as much like kind of maybe hard-hitting X's and O's and analysis and some things like that we would have from the past, but still some thoughts, certainly. Still some fun that was had out there, certainly. I'm sure by now everyone has seen the videos of Rich Rodriguez climbing up in the stands and letting some fans call plays. I tell you what, if that's not a good reason to get you to come out in the future, maybe you'll get to call a couple plays with the ball coach. But still things to glean, still things from to deuce as always, even if it was really just kind of more of a glorified practice in a way. Jed, I know you were on the sideline. I was there, but I was wrangling my almost 2-year-old and my 3.5-year-old. So I was half paying attention, half being dad. So I'll let you kind of lead here. But just any observations or anything you wanted to talk about specifically from the spring showcase.
Well, yeah, let's start with this. I was down on the field in pregame, and first of all, great turnout. Ton of former players. You talk about a who's who. I mean, everywhere I look, you couldn't swing a cat by the tail without hitting, some former all-conference Mountaineer, right? From generations past, from Darryl Talley to
Yep.
Grant Wiley. I mean, you name it. And so Rich saw me standing behind the end zone, so he came up to chat, and he was asking about the radio. I said, I don't have a mic. I said, this is a freebie. We're not even broadcasting today. I'm just watching, right?
Just
I'm
watching.
just kind of hanging out. So I don't even have an assignment here. So I kind of just worked my way, and I was eager to thinking of all the firsts. This was his first time in somewhat of a simulated game situation to talk to the kids in the locker room before we went out. And okay, it was kind of weird and surreal there to watch him address the team for the first time. And he said, "Look, I'm not going to get into the whole pregame speech. You guys will hear that later." And even then, I got chills thinking, "Oh, I know it's coming. I know it's coming. Here we go, Robert Morris. We're going to hear us strap it on. Here we go." I could already think about it in the locker room. But I'm just making my rounds in the locker room. It was very laid back, subdued. And so, I mean, we'll start with the quarterbacks. I was talking to Nico in the locker room, and he said, well, he said, Rhett told me, he said, I'm probably going to get 10 to 15 reps. Okay. And I said, all right, I'm preaching to the choir. I know. I said, but the two words that come to mind, protect the ball and be productive. Don't protect it at the expense of production. Just protect the ball and be productive. I said, which I know you'll do. You do those two things, all 15 or so of those reps will count. And boy, did he. I mean, he came out in spades. Second play of the scrimmage, goes vertical to Cam Vaughn. It's a nice, outside release vertical, deep shot. Uh, and then performed later in the scrimmage as well. What happened with Nico was he went with that first possession and really didn't come back in until we were on the fringe
Yeah.
red zone, type situation. And he made a throw. I told him when he came off the field. They were trying to go the double move to get open in the end zone, and the DB didn't bite on the double move. You saw when Nico pumped fake, so the safety didn't bite. So he had to come back down to the drop down, which was it was to the field. And it was about a 10-yard comeback, and he threw that thing. His ball placement on that thing was time capsule worthy. I mean, it was low and away because what you're thinking under those circumstances, give him a chance, but don't give the DB any chance to make a play on it. And boy, did he. I mean, he put that thing low and away. The kid makes a perfect catch. So Nico came off after the series over because the first series they got a field goal. And I said, hey, you got points. Let's start with that. You got points. That matters. And when he made that throw on that comeback later in the scrimmage, he came off and I looked at him. I just gave him a fist bump and I said, low and away. And he said, and with somebody in my face. So he knew he was feeling it. But I'll say this: Nico finished the spring, in a very strong stature. He played very well on Thursday. He was kind of almost in a zone to some extent. I'll start with him because he got the first reps, and then you go to Jalen. And look, none of these kids really did anything throughout the course of the spring. The four names that I'm going to talk about, none of them did anything. Say, I wouldn't count him in. No, I mean, all of them were productive. It's just a matter of consistency. Okay, what you would expect. You want to ease out the peaks and the troughs, the peaks and the valleys, right? And Jalen can make some things happen, and he did in the game. You saw some of that showcase last Saturday, and you've seen it throughout the course of some of these scrimmage settings in practice. And then you jump to Max Brown, and I heard some people saying after the game, "Well, hey, based on what I saw, Max Brown should be the starter." I'm like, well, first of all, I'm glad to hear that kind of chatter. All right.
Sure.
Based on, the indictments people were tossing at him coming out of that Charlotte situation, which he was just in a horrible offensive ecosystem in Charlotte. Again, there was a reason Florida signed him, that he played for the Gators before that, but went to Charlotte. That offense surrounding him was just wretched. They had a lot of problems. And he had his moments in the spring, but the reason he kind of seemed to it felt like he stood out a bit. Do I have to tell you? Right? He was live.
Yep.
Jalen and Nico had black jerseys on.
Yep.
That matters. I can't even quantify how much that matters, right? If you go down the depth chart, 1 and 2 weren't live. I'm not even saying 1. It's like 1 and 2. It's 1 and 1A. However you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Max Brown wasn't. He was live,
Correct.
So he could shake loose and make things happen on that 3rd and 8, make that guy miss. Whereas Nico wasn't allowed to do that. Jalen wasn't allowed to do that. So to Max's credit, he made the most of those opportunities. But remember, he was the only one afforded those opportunities. Nico, Jalen weren't. And then, you look at our freshmen. We talked about Scotty Fox on here a lot. We're big Scotty Fox fans. He didn't disappoint. He made some things happen in some tough situations, and his athleticism is exciting. There's a lot that he brings to the table. I think when you move beyond that, again, when you look at the running back position, we got the big boy out of Northern Iowa. You're hoping Ty Edwards really settles in and gets comfortable. Jaheim was kind of shelved for the better part of the spring for obvious reasons. You know what you got with Jaheim. That's your feature, your bell cow, your explosive playmaker. I mean, I could see. And I've said this multiple times. I could see, Jaheim fitting into the system to be almost like Avon with speed. Avon without the knee injury that he suffered as a senior in high school. I could see Jaheim almost fitting that way. Uh, Now, a couple of those running backs didn't make it; they were cut. Okay, but Hubbard, he's still sticking around. He's acquitted himself pretty well throughout the course of the spring. Uh, so he has some potential, but I do think we're going to be in the market for another running back to push the kids in that room. That's one of the rooms that we'll be dipping into the portal, I think. I was satisfied with what I saw with the first unit on the O line. Um, that they're very hard pressed with just 15 practices to come together and gel. From you're being scattered all across dust and God's creation to come together with no background, no continuity. Landon's the only holdover in that unit, and you got four starters around you that really didn't know each other until a few months ago. They'd never even met. So to ask them to come together like glue and really flourish under Jack McNeil, I think they took some strides in the spring, and it crystallized in the spring game. I think part of the reason that you saw some production from the run game started at the point of attack. So I liked what I saw there. We do need some depth. And Rich has talked about this a host of times. Not just depth in the event that somebody gets hurt, but also depth. You want quality depth that can push for time and really, it's the old metal makes metal stronger and sharper. You want some kids that can push those five kids that really were kind of the starters by the end of the spring, because you want 7 or 8 of those kids and let them push each other and make each other better. So that's where you want to get. We saw some changes in the tight end room that might have surprised some people, but I think we also have some kids that are potential playmakers in the tight end room. And then when you move out on the perimeter, or if you want to include the slots and move to the receivers, what we saw in the spring game, we saw Cam Vaughn doing Cam Vaughn things. He was making some plays. He's legit. I mean, he's a legit split in X, the skill set that you're going to look for that type of player. Oftentimes, you're going to be running the formation away from him. He'll be singled up in coverage. You want a guy who can make plays and make the most of those opportunities when he is singled up in coverage. He did it at Jack State as a freshman, and he's done it through the spring here. I think of that's a kid who's going to provide some consistent production. And then when you jump to the other side, Wes, I'll tell you what, by the end of the spring, Jaden Bray was starting to look like what you kind of hoped Jaden Bray would look like when we got him from Stillwater last year. But for the injuries, because if you remember, he struggled with a couple different injuries through most of last year. But when he did play, Cincinnati comes to mind, he made things happen. I mean, he is a formidable kid out on the perimeter. He's a 50-50 monster. And he made a play in the end zone in that scrimmage. You saw it. Great catch. That was the definition of a 50-50 ball. So, again, some of the other new faces on the perimeter, it's nice to have Preston back as well. You're going to need some numbers on the perimeter. But when you move into the slot, we don't have a lot of size, but I think we got 3 potential playmakers. You know what you got in Rodney Gallagher. Okay. And then we got the transfer and the Bowie kid from Jack State. We got Singleton from Eastern Michigan, who Rich saw and faced when he was at Jack State. I think all 3 of those kids are playmakers. Singleton, not that big of a kid, shifty playmaker in space. Same thing with Bowie, a Martinsburg kid that played at Jack State. So there are some weapons in that room, but we need numbers in that room. And that's another thing we're going to address in the portal. That's what I see on the offensive side of the room. I'm going to toss to you, and then we'll talk about the defense.
Yeah, listen, the hardest thing to do now, and this is, I mean, a good follow-up on kind of a lot of the things we talked about in this episode, is to be confident in depth, right? You could still be confident in your starters, but to be confident in depth is tough in this portal era. Heck, it's tough if you're Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State, let alone everybody else. I think everything you said there on the offensive line is absolutely right. Offensive line is one of those groups. We saw this last year, we saw it the year before. If you make it through an entire season with the same starting 5 offensive linemen, go buy a truckload of lottery tickets Because I mean, you had a rabbit's foot hidden somewhere. Just at any level of football, it rarely happens that you make it through. I don't care if it's your 12-game college football regular season, your 17-game NFL regular season, with the same starting five. It's in the trenches. It's physical. Guys are going to get banged up. I'm not even saying that it's always long-term serious stuff, but you're going to have a guy miss a week or two. You're going to have a guy exit a game in a second quarter, and all of a sudden, you need someone to give you a good 40 minutes of football kind of at the drop of a hat there. You need to have 7 or 8 offensive linemen that you feel confident that can perform for you when called upon, because you're going to need to call upon 7 or 8 at least different offensive linemen throughout the course of a football season. That's the biggest one there. But I think with a lot of the other positions as well, too, it's still the same conversation, but really the offensive line, because it's hard to find those guys. It's hard to keep those guys. It's hard. And we've been so spoiled in that regard the last few years to really have that as a strength of the team. I think that's certainly a storyline to keep an eye on here for the rest of the offseason.
I completely agree with that. It's all going to start at the point of attack. And I mean, if you have any aspirations to overachieve and do some things as a football team that nobody expects you to do, it's all going to start with the guys with their hand in the dirt. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. Now, the skill set that's required to play in this system is a little bit different than the skill set that's required to play in Neil's. There's some crossover for sure, but it's all new kids. That's the biggest thing. For the first time in a handful of years, we completely lack any level of continuity in the offensive line. When you look what Matt Moore developed, we had that really. You started with Zach Frazier in 2020. We were building continuity more and more and more, stockpiling it each year until it really crystallized the last couple of years. You're starting from scratch now. So all new faces. But if you want to jump to the defensive side of the ball, first of all, let's start with this. They were at a disadvantage in the sense that it was much more vanilla than defensive coordinator Zach Alley would ever like it to be. Uh, that is not at all the way he's going to approach a football game per se. Okay, so he had to really reel some things in, but I was kind of looking at more some fundamental or technical things. Uh, like, for instance, I saw 3 batted balls, one of them in a very critical situation. I saw 2 exterior defensive linemen do it, and I saw 1 backer do it. Wes, I'm telling you, that's the type of thing that savvy defensive football teams recognize. Okay, I'm not going to get home. I'm not going to pressure the quarterback to the point that I get a hit or a sack. How else can I impact the play? That's smart football. That's high IQ defensive football. And to see 3 of those in one scrimmage setting of 80 some odd plays, there's value to that. Because what ends up happening, if that's the kind of football that you're going to step forward, it seems like a little thing, like a crack between the keys. Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you right now, if you continue to develop those types of tiny little unheralded skills and recognize if you're coaching a defense that has 30 kids that recognize, how can I impact the play if I can't do it in the way that makes headlines or the flashy way that everybody expects? That's a way that you can impact the play. And I'm telling you right now, if you continue that, at some point in a critical game, critical moment, a critical game in the middle of October, you're going to see a ball tipped in the air, up for grabs, and picked off. You're going to see it happen. Or you're going to see a critical 3rd and 3, batted down, and get the offense off the field. Just little things. The football nerd in me sees those types of things. And I was like, you go, Zach Alley, you go. Okay. And I saw 3 different kids, 3 completely different positions, bat balls, knock them to the ground. I mean, to me, that type of thing matters. And the truth is, some people might say they see the trappings, they see the surroundings, they see Rich up in the stands letting people call plays, they see the play, field goal game we had going on, and it's all like fun and giggles, right? But this isn't just a parlor game. I mean, there was some utility and some value to what we were doing out there. There were some learning opportunities on both sides of the football and in all 3 phases. For instance, you saw a linebacker get flagged with a 15-yarder on a 3rd down. Right. I want to see that thing happen in the spring. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, Zach Alley handled it just like you thought he'd handle it. So did Rich. I mean, you saw a situation where you had a quarterback spike the ball on 4th down.
Yeah.
Right? So, and all I could think to myself was, I'm standing down there and I thought, oh boy, I saw Rich and I thought, okay, that quarterback's soul is about to leave his body. But these are all learning opportunities. And Zach Alley had several of these. I mean, he was grabbing some kids that were doing some things that he didn't like. to me, on the defensive side of the football, you saw some of the transfers, some of the newcomers. Jason Chambers comes to mind. He had the pick, the transfer from App State. That's nice to see. Uh, Zach Alley has a goal. Every time you have a practice setting, he wants 3 turnovers. That's their goal. That's their mission. I love that because that conditions the defense to think that way. We failed if we didn't get 3 turnovers when we hit the field. I love a defense that thinks that way. So you want to be as opportunistic as possible. Again, learning opportunities. One time they stripped the football and he said, look, we had 10 hats around the ball and the offense still recovered it. That can't happen. Look, I'd much rather have that happen in the spring game than the third quarter of the backyard brawl, right? Because what that does, it gives you an entire off season to review that tape, beat that in, beat that in, beat that in. And here's one of the other things. I'm in the locker room before we go out, okay? And I'm as intrigued as anything. I've been around Rich before games, obviously, right? So I kind of knew what to expect. I was eager to see what changes he's made and all that, even though this wasn't the full Monty, it wasn't a true game situation. Sure. But you're going to get a taste of it. But with Zach Alley, I didn't know what to expect. I've never been around Zach pregame, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to gravitate toward the defensive side of the locker room. I really want to see how he handles his business here, right? Well, a couple interesting things he did. He's so dialed in from a communication standpoint. He doesn't want any communication breakdowns. You hear every defensive coach in the country preach communication, communication. Well, of course, sometimes it's just lip service. He means it. Okay. Like what he did was he had the entire defense gather around right before they went out. And he's like, all right, one of the things we want to do is go through our 8-10 base signals. And he had one of the defensive coaches signal it, and the whole defense had to shout it. And he's like, just to recap, do this one. Hey, these two kind of look too much alike. Let's do it again. Make sure they all got it. And he went through that. And he said, now, guys, here's what we'll do. He said, this is obviously not a real game. He said, we'll have on the board here. He said, we'll have tendencies, the things we're thinking, the things we want, the things they're doing, the things they haven't tried. He said, when we come in from a real game, he said, that's what you can expect to see on the board. You'll get the hang of it very quickly with how we go about our business. He said, but right now, I'm kind of just running you through. It's a dry run. You're not going to see that. I just want to kind of poise you to be ready to see that. And I was listening to every word he said, thinking, I like this. I'm telling you, he has, there's a touch of OCD in a very healthy way.
Yes.
To Zach Alley. Okay. In a very healthy way. Right.
I believe that.
I say very healthy because my wife tells me I have a touch of it too. So it better be healthy. Right. But so I liked what I saw there. But yeah, on the defensive side, some of those pressure packages impacted the play. And I kept thinking, and he's dribbling really with one hand behind his back with this. He's not unloading the way he wants to unload on a true opponent and scout them and attack their weaknesses and their frailties and vulnerabilities the way he wants to. So this is a very watered down Herman Milquetoast version of what we're going to get from Zach Alley, and it was still impacting some plays. So, I mean, these scrimmages are all set up to some extent for the offense to succeed. It's what the fans want to see.
Sure.
But, I mean, that was enough. I mean, like I had a couple names that I was looking at, but I mean, I liked what I saw out of some of the D linemen. Again, I'm so excited that Eddie B's back. It's just that you can't be around Eddie B and not get excited.
That's awesome.
And he's such a perfect fit for what Rich is all about, what Zach Alley's all about. And, you know, the Bradley kid that transferred in, first started at Oklahoma, then went to Oregon. He was a highly recruited kid coming out of high school. And I'll tell you what, you can see the flash. If the light comes on, he made some plays in that game now, and he made some plays throughout the course of the spring. He's one of the ones that comes to mind that if he can be a sub package and be an impact player, Fred Perry's another guy. He's not running with the ones. He's the transfer safety from Jack State. I just like the fact the kid loves contact. Yeah. You can't have enough of that in your defensive locker room. You can't have enough of that populating the two deep in your defense. That's infectious. That Carl Joseph mentality, he's going to smack somebody, and that whole defense is going to come alive at some point this season. At some point this season, he's going to DC somebody, just decleat the daylights out of somebody at a point when we desperately need it, and he's going to energize the entire team. So I saw a lot of good. I liked the field goal competition early. Those kickers were lighting it up, man. How about that?
I was going to say, we got that. I'm very encouraged by what we saw from the kickers early on. Okay, I mean we had some kickers drilling some 50+ yarders, so that's always good to see. I'm good with that.
Well, we left Dusty out. Dusty's up in the PA. Wes, here's the funny thing. What you missed, Dusty does that at every practice. I think I've talked
Mm-hmm.
about that on here before. Rich let him do it for the spring game.
Let him
So
do
now
it
you
for
got
the
a
spring
dose of
game.
what you hear. Yeah, you got a dose of what you hear at every practice with Dusty doing it over the PA system in the spring game. I was like,
boo.
yeah, you're encouraged, ladies and gentlemen, you're encouraged to boo the kickers if they
If
miss
the
it. Let's
kicker
pressure them.
misses,
Cheer
please
them if they
encourage you
make
to
it.
boo him.
Yes. And finally, Wes, I think we'll wrap up with this. I've been sitting on this for a couple days. It's not breaking news anymore. I'm safe to report it. I got a phone call a couple days ago. Said, hey, hush, hush. Announcement's not out yet. But what's going to happen is there's going to be a press release Wednesday night, which is right now as we're taping. He'll hit the media circuit on Thursday, so it'll be as the show drops. So it's already out there for the public on the website or on the Twitter account. Reese's Senior Bowl. We are thrilled to announce Drew Fabianich as the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, and then gives his CV. So Drew has a new gig. It fits it perfectly. Director of the Senior Bowl. You tell me rubbing shoulders with all his former NFL buddies. It's perfect for him. So
Yep, he'll be good at
yeah,
that.
happy for Drew. Happy for Drew. He's moving on. And yeah, so here you go. Friend of the show. Yeah.
Maybe,
So here we go.
maybe I'll see him. Maybe I'll see him down in Mobile one of these years.
You might. You might. Yeah.
Maybe we'll grab a Butterburger at the Culvers right there by the football stadium where they have the Senior Bowl.
That sounds
yeah.
tasty.
Congrats to one of our former guests here on the show for landing a nice gig there, certainly. And wasn't it Mike Mayock that was doing that for a while? Wasn't he the person beforehand? It's some higher profile people have had that position. So that's good for him.
Mayock sounds familiar in association with that before he went back to the Raiders.
Or maybe was it Lombardi?
Was
it Lombardi before he went back to join Belichick at UNC?
With Carolina?
Yeah.
The dude that was just doing it took the Oklahoma GM job with the Sooners.
That's the one I'm thinking.
Venables just hired him.
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking.
That's who most recently. But I think you're right. Those others that you mentioned,
yeah, they've been involved.
I always associate those types of names with that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then who was it that did color for all those years for Alabama? Long time association with the Browns. He was the GM for the Browns. I'm forgetting his name. I can't believe I forget his name. Great, nice guy, nicest guy you ever meet. He did it for several years.
He did it for a while. Yeah,
I can't believe I forget his name. He was with the Browns for many years, but then he did, like he said, he was in the booth, that legendary, duo that Alabama had for all those years. Mm-hmm. He was the color guy. What was his? I'll think of it when we go off the air.
Of course, that's how this always works.
Yeah.
You know what his name was? Hoge.
It was Hoge.
No, sorry, it was Hodge. Right. Hodge, not Hoge.
You know what we should have done, Wes? We should for the next several episodes, end every show with a word that rhymes with Hodge, right? Like all through the summer. End every show.
This weekend, I'm taking the girls to stay at a lodge.
There we go. Good start.
A final thank you to our friends at Johnston Equipment. 0% financing for 72 months, plus a free loader on select Coyote models in stock. You got to visit Johnston Equipment on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. That will do it for this edition of ITG.
One quick one for you, Wes.
Yep.
I want your quick opinion, because otherwise we'll be here all night. All right. Everybody's been asking me my opinion to weigh in on this. It's been in the news. Resurrecting a goat that has been dead and extinct for 10,000 years. Wolf, I'm sorry, goat. I said goat. Resurrecting the dire wolf that has been extinct for 10,000 years. And now it no longer is, and it's howling, and it's back alive. Thoughts?
So two things, a couple things, actually. One, the pictures of George R.R. Martin holding the dire wolf are pretty sweet, but also I can't believe I got a picture of George R.R. Martin holding a dire wolf before we actually got him to write the stinking conclusion book that we've all been waiting for years and years and years and years. Two, Jed, I love it because you know this. Owen knows this. Most of our loyal listeners know this. If you look behind me here on the stream, you'll see some references in the background. I'm a big Grateful Dead fan. They're my favorite band of all time. And their very first album, Working Man's Dead from Warner Brothers back in 1972, has a popular song called Dire Wolf on it that is about the lore of dire wolves. Yes, it's a great tune. It's like a cool, like, bluegrassy tune, and it's only like 2 or 3 minutes long. It's not one of the 20, 30-minute Grateful Dead songs, okay? So the pop culture dork in me is absolutely loving this.
As I understand it, the dire wolf, it's actually closer to, it's at least 10,000 years, maybe closer to 12,000 years, but it's been going for a long time. All
long
right.
time.
It's been going for quite some time. And some people are saying, don't mess with Mother Nature. Well, I get it. But then again, we kind of are Mother Nature.
This is the start.
Something,
this is the start of real life Jurassic Park. That's where we're going.
That's what I was going to say. That's the analogy everybody's using. I'm like, part of me says, look, especially when I hear the conversations about the CIA toying with this stuff, and hey, can we make a super soldier by crossbreeding this species with that? I'm like, whoa,
Stop.
whoa,
Slow your roll.
whoa.
Calm down. Stop.
Things typically leave this earth for a reason.
Yes.
I don't know if we should circumvent those and say, hey,
that's a good way to put it.
That reason's not good enough for us. You know,
I think that's a good way to put it.
We're gonna right this wrong that was wrong for a reason. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. You're right. The Jurassic Park thing, it seemed all well and nice when they're confined to this island of the South Pacific, but how long were they confined? You know,
you spent all this time wondering if you could. You never stopped to ask if you should.
There you go.
Jeff Goldblum.
You're not the first person that said that to me. Yeah. That's from the famous Jeff Goldblum quote.
Well, all I'm saying, Jed, is if we can cross one of these dire wolves with like a middle linebacker or a running back or something, and get him in the old gold and blue, I will be all for it.
Tackling an AI running back, but go ahead. Yeah, that's right.
Thanks to our guy Skylar Callahan for throwing this all together. For the beer truck Big O and the signal caller Jed Drenning, I'm Wes Schuler. The one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Hodge. Not Hodge. Hodge. You've been in the gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.